The night my wife went back to her ex and the morning I finally walked away for good. She hadn't even shut the car door when she saw it, my suitcase. Navy blue Samsonite, zipped tight and upright like it had someplace better to be. Just sitting there next to the umbrella stand by the front door. It was hers once, the suitcase. A birthday gift from me back when we still did that kind of thing, give gifts, I mean. Before we started giving each other silence and second-guessing instead. She stopped mid-step, still in the driveway, squinting through the morning haze like maybe she was dreaming this whole thing up. Her hair was a little messy. Lipstick smeared in a way that didn't quite say, I fell asleep watching Netflix. Her blouse was wrinkled, not from sleeping in it, but from someone grabbing fistfuls of fabric and not caring about creases. My stomach clenched, but I didn't flinch. I was on the couch when she walked in. No dramatic music playing in the background. Just me, a half-finished cup of cold coffee in hand, and a pair of eyes that had stopped hoping sometime around midnight. You sleep okay? I asked, casual as Sunday morning. She froze in the doorway like the question was a slap. What's going on? She asked. Why is your suitcase? I figured I'd save you the trouble of pretending to feel bad, I said, and that quieted her. I didn't yell. Didn't cry. I think that's what threw her off most. Carla had always been the one with the sharp tongue and teary eyes when things got heavy. I used to chase after her when she walked out during fights, thinking if I could just say the right thing, it would fix us. That morning, I didn't move. I just sat still, watching her come undone by my calm. You're leaving? She asked, her voice too steady to be real. I nodded once and stood, walking over to the suitcase. I didn't say anything else for a minute. I let her stand there in yesterday's clothes, the guilt creeping in behind her eyes like slow-moving fog. She looked like she wanted to rewind the tape, like she wasn't sure if last night really happened the way she'd planned it. But I knew better. The night before, she told me she was going out with friends. Her eyes had a look I'd seen before, the kind of gleam that says watch me burn something down. When she didn't come back, I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't pace the floors or check her location like I used to. I just sat down and started packing. Because here's the truth, when your wife spends the night at her ex's place to get under your skin, it's not about the betrayal. Not really. It's about the fact that she knew it would hurt and did it anyway. This wasn't the first time she played games. It was just the first time she made the mistake of thinking I'd still be standing here when she got back. You think I did this to hurt you, she said quietly. I looked at her for a long beat. Not in anger, just disappointment, maybe? Sadness. Like staring at a house you helped build and realizing the foundation had been cracked from the start. I think you stopped loving me long before last night, I said. She flinched. That hit home. We both knew it was true. The silence that followed stretched thin and fragile between us. Somewhere in the kitchen, the fridge kicked on. Outside, a dog barked. The world kept spinning while mine came to a full stop. I looked at her one last time, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to fix anything. I'm not mad, I said. But I'm not staying. And just like that, I rolled the suitcase to the door. Her eyes followed me, wide and stunned, like she never expected me to be the one who left first. Funny how people can dish it out for years, but they never really believe you'll stop coming back for more. I used to think the scariest thing about being cheated on was the betrayal itself, the image of someone you love in someone else's arms. That was naive. The real fear? It's realizing how long you let someone chip away at you little by little until you're a stranger in your own skin and you can't remember what it felt like to be safe in your own house. Carla never hit me. She didn't scream or break things. No big, dramatic blow-ups. Her weapon of choice was subtlety, calculated silence, sharp glances, withheld affection. A slow erosion of trust so quiet you don't even hear the walls crumbling. You just wake up one day buried under the rubble and wonder how long ago the ceiling gave in. It started early. A comment here, a shrug there. We'd be out at dinner and she'd spend half the time on her phone, laughing at someone else's messages. If I asked who it was, she'd smirk and say, just a friend, you don't know them. And I'd let it go because I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous husband, the insecure one. I wanted to believe we were better than that. Turns out we weren't. Looking back, I think she liked the power of it. The game of it. Leaving her phone screen angled just enough for me to see a name I didn't recognize. Coming home late and acting surprised that I was even worried. Don't be so dramatic, she'd say, brushing past me like I was in the way of her evening. God, you're exhausting when you're like this. Exhausting. That was her favorite word for me. It's funny how someone can spend so long convincing you that your feelings are the problem, you start to believe it. I used to lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if maybe I was too needy. Too emotional. Too much. And all she had to do was roll away from me in bed without a word and I'd feel like I was taking up too much space just by breathing. That's how you know you're losing yourself, when you start apologizing for existing. And yet I stayed. Because when things were good, they were so good. Carla could be warm. Funny. She'd wrap her arms around me from behind while I made coffee and whisper something sweet about our weekend plans. We'd dance in the kitchen in our socks to songs from the early days, laugh until we cried, make love like we still believed in forever. Those moments? They were crumbs. But I was starving. So I took them. Every now and then she'd toss me just enough affection to keep me tethered. That's what made it so hard to leave. Because I wasn't walking away from her, I was walking away from the version of her I kept hoping would come back. But she never did. And when I finally caught her texting her ex at midnight from the bathroom, thought she was being quiet, I didn't confront her. Not right away. I just watched her walk back into the room like nothing had happened. Climbed into bed. Rolled away. Same pattern. Different night. That's when it hit me, this wasn't an accident. This was intentional. She wasn't just neglecting me. She was enjoying it. Like every unanswered question, every dismissive glance, every late night out was a calculated move. A slow tightening of the vice. And I was the one who kept handing her the handle. So when she told me she was going to stay with friends for the night and left with that little smirk, the one that always meant I win, I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I packed my bag. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the one losing the game. Because the second you stop playing, the game falls apart. She stood there in the hallway just beyond the threshold of the living room, and for a moment, just a blink, I saw something behind her eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time. Fear. Not fear of me. I've never raised a hand to her, never even yelled louder than my own conscience. No, this was a different kind of fear. The fear of being found out. The look people get when the curtain gets pulled back and suddenly they're center stage with no script. You're really just walking away? She asked again, a little sharper this time. Like saying it differently might undo what I'd already done. And that right there was the moment I realized something important. She never thought I'd actually leave. Not really. She thought I'd get angry, sure, maybe storm around, maybe sleep on the couch. But leave? No. That wasn't in her version of the story. In her head, she was still the main character. And I was just background noise. The dependable understudy. Always waiting, always forgiving, always there. Not anymore. You didn't think I'd actually do it, did you? I asked, not angry, just tired. She crossed her arms. You're overreacting. That word. Overreacting. Like my pain was a choice. Like finding out your wife spent the night at her ex's place on purpose was something I was supposed to shrug off like a flat tire. You said it was just to get under my skin, I said, still holding my coffee like it was an anchor. So, did it work? Her jaw clenched, but she didn't answer. So I asked the one question that had been burning through my brain all night, the one that I couldn't quite shove down no matter how many versions of our past I played back. What exactly were you hoping I'd do when you went to him? She blinked. I could see her rehearsing the lie in her head, running through possible answers like channels on a remote. Pick the right one, maybe you get some sympathy. Pick the wrong one, and the story's over. You don't understand, No, I do, I cut in gently. I understand more than you think. Because I'd spent the last year trying to earn affection like it was a paycheck. Trying to be the perfect version of myself, hoping that if I did enough, said enough, loved enough, she'd see me again. Really see me? But she didn't want a partner. She wanted an opponent. Someone to spar with. Someone to keep beneath her just enough to feel in control. She mistook my love for weakness. That's the tragedy in all of this. I would have fought for her. I did, actually. Through late-night arguments, icy silences, passive-aggressive texts, I fought to stay married to a woman who treated our vows like suggestions. But when someone chooses to hurt you on purpose, that's not a partner. That's a saboteur. You were hoping I'd beg, I said finally. That I'd fall apart. That maybe I'd rage or cry or collapse just so you could feel powerful for 5 more minutes. I looked at her. Not the version of her I used to paint in my head, the soft-spoken, fun-loving woman I fell in love with in college, but the one who stood before me now. Cold, calculating, defensive, and deeply, deeply uncomfortable. But even then, I didn't hate her. It's a weird thing, isn't it? You'd think betrayal would flip a switch, make it easier to shut the door, literally and figuratively. But it doesn't. At least not right away. Because you don't just mourn the relationship. You mourn who you were in it. Who you thought they were. The future you thought you were building. I set my coffee down. My hand was steady. I don't hate you, Carla, I said. But I love myself more than I used to. That's why I'm not sticking around for round 2. Her lip trembled just for a second. I could tell she wanted to reach for me, but not out of love. Out of control. You're really going to leave me? She asked, and this time it wasn't a challenge. It was a confession. She knew the game was over. I already did, I said. And I stepped out the door. The first night away was quiet. Too quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet you get when you're finally alone with a good book and no deadlines. This was the kind of silence that buzzes behind your ears. The kind that makes your mind replay every word you said and every one you didn't. I stayed at a motel about 20 minutes from our house. Nothing fancy. Just a king bed with sheets that smelled like industrial detergent and a tiny flat screen with exactly 5 working channels. The walls were thin enough that I could hear the guy next door fighting with someone on speakerphone about child support. Every few minutes, the ice machine coughed somewhere down the hall. Still better than being home. I didn't sleep much that night. It wasn't regret. It wasn't doubt. It was decompression. My body still thought I had to be ready. Ready to defend myself. To apologize for things I didn't do. To explain feelings she never cared to understand. I kept checking my phone out of habit. Not because I wanted her to call, but because a part of me needed to know if she would. That small, ridiculous part that still wondered if maybe, just maybe, she'd wake up, see the empty space in the bed, and finally realize what she'd lost. Nothing came. No text. No missed call. Just a screen full of silence and the default wallpaper we both always said we'd get around to changing. The next day, I went to work like nothing had happened. That's one of the weirdest things about real heartbreak. Life doesn't pause for it. People still honk in traffic. Emails still pile up. The guy at the deli still forgets your pickle on the side. No one looks at you and thinks, hey, that guy just walked away from a life he built for 10 years. My coworker Jason asked if I was free for lunch. I said no. I wasn't. I sat in my car eating a cold sandwich, staring at the dashboard clock like it was going to tell me what came next. Then around 3 p.m. she texted. So this is how it is? Just that. No, I'm sorry. No, can we talk? No acknowledgement of where she'd been or what she'd done. Just a statement. Cold. Measured. Like she was accusing me of betrayal now. I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't respond. What could I even say to that? That I was proud of myself for finally walking away? That the empty motel room felt more like home than the house we bought together? She didn't text again that day. But by nightfall, the silence had turned into something else entirely. My sister called around 9 o'clock. Hey, I just got off the phone with Carla. What the hell is going on? Ah. So that was the new phase. She wasn't going to reach out directly, not with honesty anyway. She was going to start planting her version of the story in other people's ears. She told me you just left, my sister said. Didn't even try to work it out. That you've been cold for months. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the script was so predictable it practically wrote itself. Did she also tell you she spent the night at her ex's place? There was a pause. A long one. No, my sister said quietly. She didn't mention that. Yeah. Funny how that part got left out. That was the moment I realized something important. I wasn't just dealing with a broken relationship. I was dealing with a narrative. One she'd already started spinning to anyone who'd listen. I'd be the bad guy in her story. The distant husband. The one who emotionally checked out. Not the guy who begged her to talk. Who stayed up night after night wondering why the person he loved didn't seem to love him anymore. Who watched her walk out the door and didn't follow, not because he stopped caring, but because he finally started caring about himself. By the time I hung up with my sister, the motel ceiling was starting to feel like a familiar friend. I turned off the lamp, listened to the vending machine hum outside my door, and in the dark I made myself a promise. I won't let her rewrite the story. By the end of the week, the story had legs. It started with small things, passive-aggressive comments on social media, vague captions, and carefully curated selfies of Carla looking tearful but resilient. You know the kind. Have a smirk as a little red, sunlight catching just enough to say, I'm hurting, but I'm strong. Her Instagram bio changed from wife, dreamer, fighter, to just fighter. That was the first red flag. The second was when mutual friends started texting me things like, hey man, I don't want to take sides, but... Here's the thing about people saying they're not picking sides, they usually already have. Carla had a way with words. She always did. And now she was using it to paint a picture of a husband who grew cold, stopped trying, emotionally checked out. The kind of guy who'd walk out one morning without warning and leave his poor, devastated wife trying to pick up the pieces. It was subtle, but effective. She never said anything outright. Just hinted. Suggested. Some people never fight for you the way you fought for them. Or it's hard realizing you gave your best years to someone who never saw you. Suddenly I was the villain in a story I didn't write. The real gut punch came when Rachel called one of our closest friends from the early days. We'd gone on double dates, game nights, even spent 2 Thanksgivings at her place. She was neutral. Or so I thought. I just think maybe there's more going on here than you're saying, she said gently. Carla's been really torn up. She said you shut down a long time ago. Torn up, right? I sat there with my phone pressed to my ear, staring at the ceiling fan in my motel room like it might have the answers. My mouth went dry. Not because of what Rachel said, but because of what she believed. Carla was spinning this narrative like she was running PR for her own heartbreak. I thought about telling Rachel the whole truth about the nights I'd find Carla texting with her ex, how she used to come home at 2 a.m. with makeup smudged and no explanation. I thought about describing that moment at the airport years ago when she forgot our anniversary dinner because she was visiting a friend. But I didn't. Because when you defend yourself too hard, people think you've got something to hide. So instead, I just said, I hope she finds what she's looking for. Rachel paused like she expected a fight. When I didn't give her one, she said, I just hope you're being honest with yourself. I hung up a little slower than I meant to. The worst part wasn't that Carla was twisting the story. It was how easily people bought it. Because she knew how to cry just the right way. She knew how to look broken without ever owning what broke us. I started noticing the shift in our friend group too. Fewer messages. Fewer group invites. My phone, once noisy with weekend plans, went quiet. Even the couples we used to vacation with went dark. I had become radioactive. Some of them, I'm sure, didn't want to get involved. Others probably believed her version more than mine. And maybe I couldn't blame them. I didn't have screenshots. I didn't have receipts. Just a suitcase by the door and a long list of nights I cried alone while she texted someone else. The loneliness hit harder than I expected. Not because I wanted to go back, but because I realized how many of those friendships were built on us, not me. When the us broke, I lost more than just a partner. I lost the scaffolding around my life. And Carla? She was still living in the house we picked out together, still surrounded by the furniture we assembled while half-drunk on boxed wine, still using the story of our marriage as a launch pad for her comeback arc. I wasn't just gone. I was erased. That's when I knew this wasn't over. Not really. Because leaving someone like Carla doesn't end when you shut the door. It ends when you stop letting them control the narrative. I didn't plan on responding. Not at first. Let her say what she wanted, I figured. People who knew me would know better. And the ones who didn't? They didn't matter. That's what I told myself. Again and again. But dignity doesn't always pay off in the short term. And when your ex-wife starts telling people you emotionally abandoned her when she conveniently forgets to mention where she actually spent the night while you were packing your life into a suitcase, that silence starts to rot. It was a Tuesday when it hit me full force. I walked into a coffee shop not far from the office, same place I'd been going every week for the past 2 years. Friendly barista. Good espresso. Nice little routine. But that day something felt off. The usual girl behind the counter. Sam. I think her name was. Didn't smile when I ordered. In fact, she barely made eye contact. Just gave me a tight nod and turned to the machine. I figured maybe she was having a bad day. Happens to all of us. But as she handed me the cup, she said, flat, hope things get better for your situation. I blinked. Sorry. She shrugged. Just what I heard. Doesn't matter. She walked away before I could respond. And just like that, I was no longer anonymous in my own life. Carla had made sure of that. I sat in my car for a while, sipping bitter coffee and staring at the steam rising off the lid. That moment, small, awkward, almost forgettable, it felt like a turning point. Because it made one thing painfully clear. She wasn't just sharing her side of the story. She was branding it. And I was letting her. I'd spent so long trying to take the high road, trying to be the bigger person, that I didn't notice the road had collapsed beneath me. Carla wasn't playing fair. She never had. And while I kept hoping honesty would eventually win out, she was busy turning my silence into proof of guilt. The final straw came 3 days later. A message popped up from a number I didn't recognize. Did you really cheat on Carla before she went to her ex? No judgment. Just surprised. That one word before rattled me. Not only had she rewritten the timeline, she'd repainted it completely. Now I was the reason she'd gone back to her ex. I was the one who broke her trust. Suddenly I wasn't the abandoned, betrayed husband. I was the villain. The setup for her redemption arc. And I'd let it happen. That night, I pulled out my laptop and started writing. Not a rant. Not a list of grievances. Just the truth. I wrote it plainly. Not for attention. Not to get sympathy. Just to reclaim something that had been slipping through my fingers since the moment she walked out that door. My name. I didn't even post it right away. Just let it sit there, blinking on the screen. The next morning, I forwarded it to a few people. Friends who'd drifted. Family who'd gone quiet. I wasn't trying to convince anyone. I just wanted them to hear the other half of the story, the version that didn't come with curated Instagram filters or carefully chosen quotes about strength and resilience. By the end of the day, 2 of them responded. One was my cousin Leah. She told me she'd always thought something was off in the way Carla talked about things. Said she was glad I finally spoke up. The other was Rachel. She apologized. I didn't know, she wrote. I should have asked more questions. I didn't hold it against her. Not really. Carla was good at what she did, turning half-truths into gospel. Making herself look like the one who stayed too long, loved too hard. It's a story people love to believe, because it's easier to blame the quiet one. But I wasn't going to be quiet anymore. And as I hit send on that message, I realized I wasn't trying to hurt Carla. I wasn't out for revenge. I just wanted to draw a line in the sand. So the next time someone asked what happened between us, I wouldn't have to explain myself. I'd just say, it's complicated. But if you want the truth, I've got receipts. It was a rainy Thursday when she showed up. Not poetic rain, either. Not that soft, cinematic drizzle where people kiss under umbrellas. No, this was the kind that came down sideways, sharp, wind-blown, aggressive. The kind of storm that soaks your socks in seconds and makes you question every decision that got you outside in the first place. I was home. Not the motel anymore. I'd gotten tired of bad coffee and thinner pillows. I'd moved into a short-term rental with creaky hardwood floors and a leaky kitchen window. Still smelled like the last tenant's microwave dinners. But it was mine. Quiet. Uncomplicated. I was heating up soup when I heard the knock. Not a text. Not a call. Not even a warning. Just a knock. 3 times. Firm. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity's a stubborn thing, especially when you've been living in emotional aftershocks. I cracked the door, and there she was, Carla, soaked to the bone. Mascara running like war paint down her cheeks, hair clinging to her face. "Can I come in?" she asked, no umbrella, no apology. Just that familiar tone. Half entitled, half exhausted. I didn't move. I didn't speak. Just stood there, letting the rain fill the silence between us. "I didn't know where else to go," she added, softer this time. Funny. For someone who always had options, it was strange hearing her say that. She looked smaller now, less polished, like the carefully maintained version of herself had started unraveling, thread by thread. I stepped aside, not because I wanted her there, but because I needed to see how this would play out. Sometimes closure doesn't come from walking away. Sometimes it walks back in, dripping wet and full of unfinished sentences. She sat on the edge of the couch, wringing out the sleeves of her sweater like she was buying time. "I've made a mess of things," she finally said. I raised an eyebrow. Understatement of the decade. "I didn't expect you to actually leave. I thought you'd stay. Fight for us." I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, waiting. She looked up, eyes red but clear. "I went to Marcus's that night because I wanted to feel wanted. Not because I loved him. I wanted to know someone still saw me." There it was. The truth, or at least the version of it she was willing to hand over. "You could have just told me that," I said, "instead of gutting me." She nodded barely. "I know. I was stupid. I was cruel. I didn't think you'd finally hit your limit." I let her sit with that. Let the room hold its breath. "I've been spiraling," she added. "The stories, the things I said to people, I was trying to protect myself. By destroying me," I said. Calm. Even. Not angry. Just done. She blinked as if hearing it plainly somehow made it worse. "I didn't come here to ask you to come back," she said. I needed to see you. To know you're okay. And maybe to say I'm sorry." That word. Sorry. Too small for the damage. Too late to matter. But still, it landed. Not because I believed she'd changed, but because I could tell, for once, she wasn't trying to manipulate me. She looked lost. Human. And scared. And that scared me more than anything else. Because part of me still remembered how much I loved her. Not her now, but her then, the girl I danced with in our kitchen. The woman I imagined kids with. The partner I tried so hard to believe in. And she was sitting 3 feet away, soaked, shattered, and sorry. Then she asked it. Do you think there's any version of this where we fix it? My breath caught. Not because I didn't expect the question, but because I did. And I wasn't sure what answer would let me sleep at night. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was asking for another chance to rewrite the ending. And now the choice was mine. She asked me if we could fix it, and suddenly I was 24 again, standing in our first apartment, holding a bouquet of gas station flowers and an apology I didn't owe. It's strange what memories resurface when you're given the option to repeat history. I sat down across from her, careful not to lean in, not to give her hope. The space between us wasn't just physical, it was years of things unsaid, nights wasted, love unreciprocated. I stared at the woman I once thought I'd grow old with and realized I didn't even recognize her anymore. Maybe I never really did. You want honesty? I asked. She nodded, eyes wide like a student bracing for a bad grade. I used to rehearse arguments with you in the shower, I said. Things I'd never say out loud because I knew you'd twist them, weaponize them. I'd win imaginary fights because I never won the real ones. She blinked, but didn't interrupt. I used to cry in the car on the way home. You never noticed. You'd be on the phone when I walked through the door or halfway through a bottle of wine. And if I ever looked sad, you called it guilt-tripping. Her bottom lip quivered, but I kept going. You say I didn't fight for us. But what you really mean is I didn't fight you. I didn't play your game. I didn't beg when you ghosted me in our own marriage bed. She looked down at her lap. I loved you, I added, quieter now. Harder than I should have. Longer than I should have. I loved you through versions of you that didn't even like me. I stopped. Let the silence sit between us like a third person. Finally, she whispered, I didn't know you felt all of that. And that right there, that was the problem. She didn't know because she never asked. Never made space for the version of me that wasn't useful to her. The one that didn't entertain, didn't please, didn't praise. I wasn't perfect, I said. God knows I wasn't. But I didn't deserve to be made small just so you could feel big. Her voice cracked. I was scared. I thought if I didn't feel wanted, then I wasn't worth anything. And you made me pay for that, I said gently. I could see the understanding hit her like a wave. Her expression didn't change much, but something softened. Like she was finally seeing not the man who left, but the man she'd driven to the door. I haven't been okay, she said. Since you left. I believe you, I said. But neither was I. And I stayed. She wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. The rain had dried off her clothes, but she looked soaked in something heavier, remorse, maybe. Or just recognition. I'm sorry, she said again, this time more like a person than a performance. And I nodded. Because I believed her. But belief isn't the same as trust. And apologies aren't blueprints. You don't rebuild a house just because someone finally admits they set the fire. I'm not angry anymore, I told her. But that doesn't mean I want to go back. She looked up, hopeful. I mean, I'm not angry because I'm done, I said. The light in her eyes flickered. But this time she didn't protest. She didn't beg. She just nodded. Quiet. Almost grateful to hear it plainly. Is there anything you need from me? She asked. And I thought about that. I thought about all the things I used to need: closure, an apology, understanding. But sitting there, across from her, I realized I already had all of that now. What I needed was to leave well. Just this, I said. Let's not rewrite what happened. Let's not poison the air between us anymore. Let's call it what it was and let it end. She nodded. Slowly. Tears now falling without force. Not dramatic. Just real. And I knew then we were finally speaking the same language. She left without another word. No dramatic exit. No slammed door. Just the soft click of her heels down the hall, the low groan of the door closing behind her. Like a breath finally exhaled after months of holding it in. I didn't move for a long time. Just sat there, listening to the silence. The kind that wasn't hostile this time, just honest. I could still see the imprint of where she sat on the couch, slightly damp from her rain-soaked jeans. Proof she was here. Proof she was gone. It didn't feel triumphant. It didn't feel tragic. It just felt true. That night, I didn't go out. I didn't call anyone. I turned my phone off, made a grilled cheese, and sat on the floor with my back against the fridge because I used to do that in college when the world felt too big. Funny how comfort sometimes comes from the things we used to do when we had nothing to lose. I thought about the version of myself I'd been in that marriage. The man who said it's okay when it wasn't. Who forgave things that went unnamed. Who made excuses for a woman who treated him like a placeholder. And then I thought about the man who packed a suitcase not out of anger but self-respect. The one who let her back in long enough to tell the truth and still said no. That was the twist, really? Not that she came back. Not that she was sorry. The twist was that I didn't need her to stay to feel whole again. For years, I thought closure came from reconciliation. From the other person finally understanding your pain. But that's not it. Closure is a quiet thing. It's waking up one morning, looking in the mirror, and not needing to explain your reflection to anyone. It's not needing to be believed to know what's real. She may tell her story. People may still wonder. But I know the truth. And that's enough. A week later, I donated the suitcase. I walked it down to a local charity thrift store on a Saturday morning, nodded at the woman behind the counter, and left it there without fanfare. It felt weirdly symbolic, like I was giving away the last thing that ever made me feel like I didn't belong somewhere. I walked out of the store into the sunlight. The air was cool, crisp, honest. And that's when it hit me, this wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. A different kind of beginning. The kind you don't plan or chase. The kind that waits quietly until you're ready. I got in the car. Rolled down the window. Let the wind come in without asking permission. And I said it out loud to no one in particular, just the air, the road, and myself. I'm finally home.